Welcome to your front-end development deep dive. We're taking your notes on getting started.
Oh, yeah.
They're seriously impressive, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And mapping out how to build amazing web applications in 2024 and beyond.
It's a fast-moving landscape.
It is.
So this deep dive is about giving you the knowledge to navigate it, from the fundamentals to the
fancy framework.
fancy frameworks, yeah.
Speaking of fundamentals,
Okay.
let's talk building blocks.
I like it.
You've got HTML, the structure of web content. Think of it like the foundation of a house.
The foundation, yeah.
And then there's CSS, which dictates the style, the look and feel, kind of like the interior design choices you'd make.
And just like a well-built house uses the right materials, semantic HTML is key.
Right.
It's about choosing the most appropriate HTML element for the job.
Okay.
For instance, using a nav element for navigation, tell search engines this is important for site structure.
Okay.
Potentially boosting your search ranking compared to just using a generic div.
So you're not just making the website look good.
Right.
You're making it make sense to search engines, too.
Yes, exactly.
And that's where CSS comes in.
Right.
Making sure everything is visually appealing and responsive across different screen sizes.
Exactly. Imagine designing a website that looks stunning on your laptop, but when you view it on your phone,
Oh, yeah.
it's completely jumbled.
Right.
Nobody has time for that.
No.
That's where tools like Flexbox and CSS Grid come in.
Okay.
They're like layout superheroes, giving you incredible control over how elements are positioned and resized.
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
You're trying to create a photo gallery that always looks perfect.
Right.
Whether someone's browsing on a giant monitor or their phone on the go.
With Flexbox, you could whip up a few lines of code, something like display.flex, justify content, center, align items.center within a container,
Yeah.
and bam, perfectly centered images, no matter the screen size.
That's impressive. But writing all that custom CSS can feel a bit like trying to build a house with just a hammer.
You're telling me it can get tedious. That's where Tailwind CSS struts in.
Oh, okay.
Instead of writing custom CSS every time, you use predefined classes, kind of like snapping together Legos to build your designs.
So it's less about knowing every CSS property by heart.
Right.
And more about cleverly combining these pre-made building blocks.
Exactly. And just like those Lego kits,
Right.
Tailwind helps you maintain consistency,
Oh.
which is huge for large projects.
Yeah.
It streamlines your workflow and keeps your code clean.
Speaking of streamlining,
Okay.
let's talk JavaScript frameworks.
All right.
They bring interactivity to websites, but choosing one
Yeah.
can feel like navigating a maze.
Especially with so many great options.
I know, right?
We'll dive into 3 popular choices.
Okay.
React, Vue.js with Kinea, and Angular, each with its own strengths and ideal use cases.
Like choosing the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
So React,
Okay.
what's the hype about?
React, developed by Facebook,
Ah.
is known for its component-based architecture. Imagine building a user interface by assembling reusable blocks of code.
Like Lego bricks.
Like Lego bricks again, exactly.
Yeah.
Each representing a specific element.
Right.
A button, a form, you name it.
Yeah.
These are your components.
So instead of rewriting code every time you need a similar element,
Yeah,
you create these components once and reuse them.
exactly.
That's efficient.
Exactly. And React's virtual DOM is another reason it's so popular.
Okay.
It acts like a middleman, optimizing how changes are reflected on the page,
Okay.
which means smoother performance even with complex updates.
It's like having a super efficient stage manager who makes sure scene changes happen seamlessly.
Bryce.
No awkward pauses or delays.
Exactly. Now, if React is the powerhouse,
Okay.
Vue.js, especially when paired with Pinea,
Right.
is known for its approachability.
Vue.js has this reputation for being beginner-friendly.
It does, yeah.
But can it handle large-scale applications?
Absolutely. It scales beautifully.
Okay.
Vue.js is a progressive framework, so you can adopt it incrementally.
Okay.
Start with a simple component, then gradually introduce more complex features as your project grows.
Right.
And when you add Pinea to the mix for state management,
Okay.
you're golden.
State management, that's always sounded a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly is state in a web app?
It's a great question. Think of it like this.
Okay.
As your application grows, you're dealing with constantly changing data,
Right.
user input,
Yeah.
information fetched from
Agree.
servers, all sorts of things.
Right.
State management is about keeping track of all that data efficiently.
So it's like having a really organized filing system
Yes.
that keeps all your data tidy and accessible.
Yeah.
But instead of folders and labels,
Right.
we have Pinea.
You got it. Pinea helps you organize and manage that data flow in a way that's both powerful and intuitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this ties into APIs, right?
Yes.
Because web apps often need to fetch or send data to other applications.
Exactly. APIs, or application programming interfaces,
Right.
are the messengers of the web.
Okay.
Imagine ordering a pizza online.
Okay.
Your app talks to the pizzeria system,
Right.
using an API to place your order, get updates on its status, and even track the delivery driver,
Yeah.
all behind the scenes.
It's amazing how much we rely on APIs without even realizing it.
It is.
What are some of the tools that front-end developers use to work with these APIs?
There are a couple popular ones, each with its own flavor.
Okay.
You've got Axios,
Okay.
which is like that super reliable friend who always gets things done.
Okay.
It's known for being easy to use and comes with handy features like error handling.
Yeah.
So you're not left scrambling if something goes wrong.
So it's like having a safety net for your API request.
Precisely. Then there's Fetch, which is built into most modern browsers.
Right.
It's a bit more hands-on, giving you finer control over the request process.
Okay.
If Axios is a pre-assembled piece of furniture, Fetch is like buying the wood and tools and building it yourself.
Okay, so both valid options.
Yes,
But one might be a bit more approachable depending on your experience and project needs.
exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Building blocks, frameworks, APIs.
We have.
But how do we actually wrangle all this code and make sure it's working as intended?
That's where the unsung heroes of front-end development come in tools and best practices. Think of it like this. You wouldn't try to build a house with just a hammer, would you?
Right, you need a whole toolbox.
You need a whole toolbox.
Yeah.
And probably a good blueprint to follow.
Exactly. So what's the first essential tool in our front-end toolbox?
We've got to start with version control using Git.
Okay.
You can think of it as a time machine for your code.
Okay.
Made a change that broke everything, no problem. Git lets you rewind to a previous version like it never happened.
It's like having the ultimate undo button,
Yes.
but on a whole new level.
Exactly. Git is invaluable for tracking changes, collaborating with other developers, and merging different versions of a project seamlessly.
Collaboration is key, especially in the world of development.
It is.
Speaking of which, what about code editors? I imagine having a good one is crucial.
Absolutely. And when it comes to code editors, Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short, is a crowd favorite.
Okay.
It's free, incredibly versatile, and comes loaded with features to make your life easier.
Like what kind of features?
Well, imagine having a coding buddy who helps you write cleaner, more efficient code.
Okay.
VS Code has things like syntax highlighting,
Right.
which color codes your code to make it easier to read,
Right.
and IntelliSense, which offers intelligent code suggestions as you type.
So it's like having autocorrect, but for code.
Yes.
That's brilliant, especially for those of us who are still learning the ropes.
it is.
What other tools are essential for aspiring front-end wizards?
Testing. It's a fundamental part of the development process and helps ensure that your code is working as expected.
Okay.
And trust me, it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
I'll admit, testing is something I've always been a bit intimidated by.
Okay.
Why is it so important?
Imagine building a beautiful, functional bridge, but you never stop to check if the supports are strong enough.
Right.
Testing is like checking those supports.
Okay.
It helps you identify and fix potential issues before they become major problems.
So it's about building that confidence in your code, knowing that you've thoroughly tested it.
Yes.
And it can handle whatever's thrown its way.
Yes.
What's a good starting point for someone new to testing?
Jest is a great option, especially for JavaScript.
Okay.
It's a JavaScript testing framework that's known for its simplicity and ease of use.
Okay.
There are tons of resources available online to help you get started.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So we have our tools.
Right.
But what about best practices? Are there any golden rules for writing cleaner, more maintainable code?
Yeah. Writing clean code is essential for collaborating with other developers, making your code easier to debug, and saving yourself headaches down the line.
It's like that saying, be kind to your future self.
Exactly.
You might be the one who has to work with this code again in the future.
And one of the simplest yet most effective practices is using meaningful names for your variables and functions.
Okay.
Instead of generic names like X or do something, choose names that clearly describe their purpose.
So instead of X, I might use username if it's storing a user's name.
Precisely. It makes your code much easier to understand at a glance.
Right.
And speaking of understanding, don't underestimate the power of comments.
Comments. You mean like leaving little notes for myself and others in the code?
Exactly. It's like leaving breadcrumbs to help you remember why you made certain decisions.
Yeah.
They're also incredibly helpful for anyone else who might work with your code in the future.
Right, so it's like having a conversation with your code,
Yes,
explaining your thought process along the way.
I like that analogy. Another important best practice is breaking down complex logic into smaller, more manageable functions.
So instead of having one giant function that does everything,
Right.
you create smaller, more specialized functions that each handle a specific task.
Right. This makes your code much more modular, easier to test, and less prone to errors.
Right.
It's like organizing your tools in a workshop.
Yeah.
Having a designated place for everything makes it easier to find what you need and keeps things tidy.
Like that Marie Kondo approach to code,
Right.
keeping things tidy and sparking joy for anyone who encounters it.
I like it. And speaking of joy, we can't wrap up this front-end development deep dive without talking about accessibility.
Right. It's something you've touched on throughout this episode.
We have.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
Making sure our websites and applications are usable by everyone,
Right.
regardless of any disabilities, is absolutely crucial.
It's not just about checking boxes. It's
Yeah.
about creating a more inclusive web for everyone. And thankfully, there are tons of resources and tools available to help developers design with accessibility in mind from the get-go.
Which brings us to our final question for you, dear listener.
Okay,
We've explored the essential building blocks,
we have.
from HTML and CSS to JavaScript frameworks and APIs.
Right.
We've even unpacked crucial tools and best practices.
Yes.
So what's next?
Okay.
How do you take this knowledge
Right.
and actually start building?
That's the exciting part. It's like having all the ingredients for a delicious meal.
Yeah.
Now it's time to start cooking.
I love that analogy. No more just reading the recipes.
Right.
It's time to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty.
Precisely. And the best way to learn is by doing.
Okay.
Pick a project that excites you,
Right.
even if it's something small.
Yeah.
Want to build a personal website? Go for it.
Yeah.
Have an idea for a fun little web app.
Right.
Start sketching it out.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Don't get overwhelmed by the enormity of it all.
Right.
Just start with that first step, then the next and the next.
Exactly.
Before you know it, you'll be amazed at how far you've come.
And remember, the front-end landscape is constantly evolving, so embrace a mindset of continuous learning.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment, try new tools, and push your boundaries.
Right.
That's where the real growth happens.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
And I hope you, dear listener, feel empowered to embark on your own front-end development adventures.
I hope so, too.
What surprised you most about what we've discussed?
Yeah.
What are you most excited to explore further? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The world of front-end development is vast and full of possibilities.
So true.
So stay curious, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun creating amazing things.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, happy coding, everyone.